With the tone of the start of this meeting, I really don't think tonight should be seen as an inconvenience by the Council's leadership. This is an important part of democratic oversight, and I really want to have a constructive approach here. I want to leave politics at the door. This is not a Conservative Liberal Democrat thing. This is a scrutiny of a decision taken by the Executive, and it is for this committee to determine whether the process followed by the Executive was satisfactory. The focus should be on how the decision to sell Deep Cut Car Park was arrived at. I make no bones, I think it was the wrong decision, but the concern here is process. Did the Executive properly consider all aspects when making its decision in a fair way to Surrey Heath residents, and in particular Deep Cut residents? And so to help me in my mind, I sort of broke the decision down into three sections, which I'm going to go through. The first is, why would we sell any asset? The second is, why was Deep Cut Car Park chosen to be sold? And the third point, which I know I need to be careful about, is why the offer that was accepted was chosen. So point number one is why the asset was marketed, and I think this is where the Executive, to be fair, did give a reason, and it was to generate capital receipts, as we've heard. Now, is that a good reason? Is it good for a council that's going to not be here in 2 years to be marketing assets? I don't know. But over 800 Surrey Heath residents have signed a petition saying that they don't think it's a good idea. And I think there's a real question as to whether their voice is really being heard. We all want to see an accountable council. That's why we're here tonight. And we all say we want to involve residents in decision-making process. So I'd ask members of the committee, is it a satisfactory position that full council will only consider a petition which was triggered by this very issue after the decision on the issue has already been made? Voices are being cut out due to a quirk of the council's calendar. Now, it feels to me a little bit like we're saying, well, you can have your say, but only if it fits our timetable. If I'm busy on Saturday, I'm not going to listen. That perception is really damaging. And the Executive did not have the benefit of the discussion of the petition when they were making their decision. That, again, seems to me a deep flaw. It seems to me that the cart has gone before the horse. Now, I want to move on to the second question, which is why this particular asset was chosen for sale. And here, I do think there are murkier waters. I genuinely don't know the answer. I can't tell you why the Executive feels that this asset should be marketed. And if I don't know, then how do members of the public have any chance of knowing? But what I do know is that Deep Cut residents feel, in some ways, targeted. They've taken more than their fair share of Surrey Heath housing over the past 10 years. Their infrastructure has been stretched, and now their own council is taking away a vital piece of infrastructure. And the justification, well, I'll leave it up to you to see whether you think that's been made by the comments so far. I still don't understand why Deep Cut Car Park was chosen. At the Executive meeting, the portfolio holder spoke of tranches of sales, but there's no transparency to wider councillors. It may be discussed at these property working groups, but we're not all attending those, and residents certainly don't have sight of those. So we need to understand how sites are being identified and what criteria is being used. None of this appeared to be discussed at the Executive Council. Surrey Heath, as has been touched upon, has many higher value assets. So if the justification is about generating capital receipts, surely logic dictates that you would sell a higher value asset. I don't think it should be lost on the committee that the value of Deep Cut Car Park, without getting into the numbers, is a drop in the ocean when it comes to the council finances. It is neither here nor there. The only argument, when I rewatched the Executive the other day, that I could see that was preferred for this site is the idea that the car park is underused. And that just doesn't reflect the reality whenever I visited it and when I've discussed this issue with residents in Deep Cut. Any concerns on this justification seem to be ignored at the Executive meeting. There was this idea that St Barbara's Church will pick up the parking capacity. But when I raised how that would happen, given that it was intended to be used for school pickups and drop-offs, that was not engaged with at all in the Executive meeting. I appreciate the portfolio holders just engaged with it now, but the Executive didn't have the benefit of that answer when they made their decision. I don't see how this car park can both pick up capacity for Deep Cut Town Centre and also be used for pickups and drop-offs. It's going to be unavailable for large parts of the day. The Executive, in my view, therefore made a decision based on a false premise that the capacity would be picked up at St Barbara's, when the evidence to me suggests that it's not. Therefore, the only vague justification for the selection of this site does not stand up to scrutiny. Why not a more valuable site was sold? we've heard from Martin some explanation of that. Again, that wasn't touched on at the executive. This information was not available when they made this decision. Why were the capacity issues not properly engaged with? So finally, it's why this offer. And I know I need to be very careful what I say, but I think based on what the portfolio holder said, I can probably say what I'm going to say. It is clear that the highest monetary value that could be generated was not accepted. It is also clear that the offer on the table, which was most likely to see the car park preserved as a car park for public use, was not accepted. As was touched upon, the council's obligation is to obtain best value. But at no point did the executive really clarify what criteria they were using to determine best value. If it's capital receipts, then surely you would go for the highest offer, whether it's conditional or not. If it's amenity to Deep Cut Village, then maintaining the site as a car park is clearly a fundamental justification for which offer you would select. But this wasn't quantified at the meeting. No consideration was given to how you would quantify the amenity for Deep Cut residents vis-à-vis monetary value. I think that issue was not dug into enough at this meeting. And again, this leads to a feeling that residents are being cut out of the process. So why did they select this offer? I honestly don't know. I'm sure it was done in good faith, but I don't know the reason. And I don't think Deep Cut residents know the reason. And we owe it to our residents to explain the decisions taken by this council. So let's go back to those three questions. Why are we selling assets? Why was Deep Cut car park chosen to sell? And why was this particular offer accepted? I think the test should be, are we comfortable answering those questions fully to the residents who are sitting behind me tonight? Can we explain and justify that decision based on what was discussed at the executive meeting last month? I don't think we can, and I hope that the committee will agree with me. Residents are feeling cut out, and the fact that we have a petition sitting on this issue, waiting to be heard at a moment that is convenient to us as councillors, is simply unacceptable. I hope that the committee will agree with me and ask the executive to look again at this, perhaps based on some of the information that we've heard tonight, which I don't believe was discussed at the executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. So, Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with Councillor Cope's comments about this.
Ms Fard.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm here today on behalf of Deep Cut residents and residents of the nearby villages to raise our concerns about the executive's decision to sell Wooden Road car park, an essential piece of infrastructure for Deep Cut and its surrounding villages. This car park is vital to local residents, businesses, visitors, vulnerable groups and communities, and has been used by the public for years in addition to St Barbara's Church car park. The decision to sell this vital piece of infrastructure was flawed. First, the process was fundamentally flawed. I launched a petition, signed by over 800 local residents at present, asking the council not to proceed with the sale. I was informed by Democratic Services that the executive should have considered whether to defer the decision-making until full council debated the petition. This did not happen. The item was not on the agenda, and the executive was simply told the petition would be considered later after the decision. This undermines public trust and the democratic value of petitions. Second, the report which was relied upon to justify the sale was flawed. It referred to St Barbara's Church car park as new. This is incorrect. Residents have provided overwhelming evidence, including photos, social media posts, personal testimonies, that St Barbara's car park has long been used by the public. It is not new. Its current closure is temporary due to redevelopment. I have provided you with all the evidence that proves the same. The report also failed to adequately deal with the protected characteristics of worshippers, pregnant women, the elderly, people with medical conditions, and the disabled once Wooden Road car park closes. Third, the claim that Wooden Road car park is underused is false. A member of the executive who made a decision to sell the car park had earlier claimed it was underused. I mean, we heard that today. But the council's own car parking strategy, which I have provided to you, it shows it consistently operates at or near full capacity, around 40 cars. also have provided photographic and resident evidence to support this. Selling the car park to a buyer who does not intend to retain it for parking means that up to 40 cars will be displaced and possibly more demands for parking spaces created. The only other car park, St Barbara's, will soon be in heavy use again. Under a Section 106 agreement, church services and community events will soon take place at St Barbara's church building, requiring as many as 50 spaces during peak times. Under a separate agreement, St Barbara's will also serve as a drop-off point for the school, up to 100 cars probably daily. It cannot support church use, school drop-offs, local businesses, and displaced cars from Woodend Road. In addition, Deep Cut is growing. The same Section 106 agreement outlines over 1,000 new homes. This development increases, not decreases, the need for parking. Let me be clear, Deep Cut needs infrastructure, not the loss of it. If the council was in such desperate and urgent need to liquidate assets, the council had options. It could have sold another asset, as we heard today, and even if it had to sell this one, it did receive an offer from a local business that would have kept the car park open to the public. That offer was rejected. And one wonders if the difference between the two offers would have made much of a difference to the council's overall financial position. Fifth, there was also confusion about conditions of sale. Investors were originally told the car park must stay open for 2 years, but this requirement was later removed. It appears, and we heard today, that negotiations were underway before the executive formally approved the sale, raising concerns about transparency. The council's report failed to account for actual usage data, community growth, disability, access needs, and conflict in timelines. The minutes of the executive state that Woodend Road car park will be open until St Barbara's Church car park can be used. But paragraph 1.2 of the report submitted to the executive said that the car park must stay open until December 2026 or until St Barbara's reopens, whichever comes first. So what if St Barbara's car park is not ready by December 26? The community risks having no parking at all. So this decision can also result in the decline in business footfall due to the location of St Barbara's car park down the hill
Ms.
and the other
Fard,
side of the road.
have you got much to go?
Only 5 sentences.
Well, I'll give you, as
4
I've
lines.
been fair to everybody else, I'll give you a minute.
Thank you. So Surrey Heath is struggling with such decline elsewhere, and deep cut businesses should be protected against such eventuality, not thrown into it. So I urge this council to reconsider the sale, or at the very least ensure any future use preserves public access to this essential infrastructure as a car park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Report. Could you clarify, please, whether a full analysis of the usage of the area has been undertaken, how it was undertaken, and over what period of time? There's obviously been a lot of speculation this evening and in other meetings about the usage of the car park. I have to say I'm not comfortable with speculation. I would much rather have detailed facts and figures, and I wonder if we could have some clarity on that, please.
Really sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear the key word in your question. Was some analysis of what done?
Has a full analysis of the usage of the area of the car park been undertaken? And if so, how was it undertaken and over what period of time?
Yeah, there's no formal counting equipment in that car park. So there hasn't been, if you like, a quantitative analysis, formal analysis or car parking survey done.
So to be clear then, when the executive made the decision, they made the decision based on suggestive information rather than detailed information. And presumably we didn't take into impact the residents that are clear by and also a little court afterwards. I am in the process of looking for the planning application for that court to see if it makes reference to a nearby adjacent free car park. I don't remember. It may well have been before my time, but I'm trying to find it. Thank you.
There's lots of, if you like, qualitative information from our car parking team, who obviously regularly visit and inspect the car park. There's lots of information from ward councillors on usage, and also obviously taken into account was the fact that there's going to be another free car park at St Barbara's, which will be 25% larger. So those were the key points of consideration in terms of capacity.
Thanks. If I can just come back on that. Sorry, you've said that the church car park is going to be 25% larger. It's just that somebody said earlier it was actually going to be smaller than the current capacity. Can I have clarification on that? I thought somebody said that 31 spaces have been removed to make it look pretty, and don't get me wrong, you know how I love a bit of greenery. But I thought that had been said, but I may just have misheard.
It's 25% larger than Wood End Road car park.
Oh, but it's not. It's a smaller car park than the car park that was always there. Yes. Okay.
That's
thank
correct.
You.
Yeah.
Can I just, I've seen your hand. The Chief Exec just wants to come in on the parking point as well.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. As I understand it, St Barbara's, the forecourt there was also part of a parade ground and other elements as well. So whilst there was larger parking capacity there than is currently proposed under the planning application, I'm not sure it's entirely relevant for this part of the debate. The other point to make, you raised the question about analysis of the car parking usage. The points that I would refer to again would be the parking strategy, where the parking manager and his team routinely visit car parks on the basis of health and safety to make sure that they are fit for purpose and safe, and that includes our non-chargeable car parks as well, like this.
I will let you ask a question of...
Okay, it was going to be to Ms Fard, because there's been some confusion about the petitions. I'm assuming that the one we're discussing is the one with about 800 signatures. Is that correct?
I believe that's the one she said earlier.
I wonder, because that petition, as I understand it, from some material which I've seen, referred also to the two other sites which somebody mentioned a few minutes ago, including the Holly Hedge site. So there were people who were responding to that petition who were specifically concerned about the two other sites. Would you happen to know how many of the people signing that petition were concerned specifically about the deep cut site?
I can have a look at the outcome. Obviously, it's 850 residents, and some of them have made comments on it and have said which of those assets are close to their hearts. So I've seen that. I've sent the detailed outcome to the Democratic Services, and you also have got their responses as well. So that was, I mean, other councillors have it definitely. They had it yesterday, I believe. So it does mention, it does show their comments, and some of them have mentioned Deep Cut, some of them have mentioned Holly Hedge Road, but I think there is an overwhelming evidence that Deep Cut residents were unhappy about the sale.
That's very kind. So it's a bit disingenuous to suggest that the full 800 were concerned about deep cut specifically, because of course a lot of people were concerned about the Holly Hedge site in particular because of the trees and so forth, understandably. So I am a bit concerned about the numbers. I don't really think it's the role of our democratic services to sift the petition in that way. But as I say, I think it is concerning that the three sites were included in that particular petition. And if I must ask another question, it would be, are you happy with that?
Are you happy with what?
The fact that there are three sites involved in the 800 signatures as opposed to just the one. Thank you.
What matters to me is that the sale of Wooden Road car park was included in the petition, and people knew that and signed the petition. So that makes the concern valid. People who came here at the exec meeting where some of them knew that Holyhead Road open space was not included on the agenda, but in any case, they attended outside the council's premises, showing their support for our objection to the sale of Wooden Road car park. So I think there is a collective unhappiness from the residents about the whole process of sale of these assets.
Okay. Straight back into summing up, over to Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to revisit things that have already been said. I think the arguments have been made for the committee. My one sort of plea to the committee is remember why we're here. As I said at the outset, this doesn't need to be a Liberal Democrat Conservative thing. Now, I can understand the irony some people may say in me saying that, because I am a member of the Conservative Party, I am a Conservative campaigner, and yes, I can see Councillor Wilson is holding up some Conservative Party literature. But the fact that the Conservative Party has campaigned on an issue does not immediately make it wrong. And the fact that the Liberal Democrats have campaigned on an issue does not immediately make it wrong. We are here about the issue. It's not about me. It's not about the Liberal Democrats. I can see my phone's already buzzing with notifications from the official Lib Dem Twitter feed calling me all sorts of childish insults. And I know that they said they wanted to give me a drubbing today. Their words. But we are here to look at the process. We're here to say, did the executive properly make this decision? Now, I've learnt a lot more tonight than I knew from the executive meeting. And I suspect that a lot of the points that have been discussed here tonight, the members of the executive who made the decision may well not have known about. Certainly, that was the perception that I took from that meeting. And it's a perception that I've heard from a number of other people who watched that meeting. My intention here is not to be difficult, not to be frivolous, not to cause issues. It is because I and residents have a concern about the way this decision was made. And I think the committee should consider that. Give residents a voice, send this back to the executive, and tell them to consider it in light of the discussions tonight, after the petition which has been submitted regarding the sale of assets has been fully considered by full council, so that this decision can be made with all of the facts in front of us. I hope that you will consider that. I hope you will think very carefully about your duty and role here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chair. This call-in has been purely political, and Ms Fard is acting purely as a Conservative campaigner this evening, as the imprint on her literature, website and social media accounts prove. It's a shame she can't remember some of her political campaigning that she's conducted recently, but there we go. I believe myself and Mr Breeden have explained very, very clearly this evening how this whole process works, so the committee shouldn't be confused about that. I just want to make one point, really, with regards to executive meetings, in that myself and my colleagues make every effort to keep the whole meeting in public without having to go into part two. So with this in mind, all of the members actually read their paperwork thoroughly and understand what's being asked of them and what the decision entails. We believe it's in residents' best interest to conduct our meetings in public so they can witness democracy, see their councillors working for them, and to understand the workings of Surrey Heath Borough Council. Councillor Cope knows that, so now attempting to present this call-in as a concern about process is rather disingenuous, in my opinion. If this call-in was indeed about process, we really need to be querying why Councillor Cope has been campaigning against the sale of this asset prior to the executive decision at all. And in light of this being a political call-in, I hope the committee can accept the executive's recommendation in the first instance and accept the decision made.
Yes, just a point of clarification. The 850 signature petition, that is for all assets, not particularly just Wood End assets. So we would be discussing on the July the 19th. How can we distinguish between one asset and the other on a petition which takes in account all assets?
That's correct. So when the petition is discussed at full council, it will be as set out in the wording to the petition, which, so as I understand it from memory, it relates to 3 separate sites. So it will be part of the full discussion for the 3 sites, not just this one. Have I answered your question?
because we're particularly discussing Wood End, so the petition, is that going to be that relevant? Because obviously, after the event, it's going to be very confusing to discuss a petition which involves understanding 3 assets rather than this particular asset.
I agree. It will add an element of confusion, but we will deal with the petition as it's been presented to us.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. It's another point of clarity and another, just another thought. The point of clarity is if we do not call in or make a recommendation following the meeting this evening that this decision goes back to the executive, there is absolutely nothing to stop between now and the full council meeting the sale of this piece of land being concluded, because there is nothing to prevent us from completing that sale of land, which means that when the petition comes to full council, it is not really a relevant petition because one of the plots of land has already been sold. And the other thing that comes to mind, and I have once or twice in this chamber over the last couple of years heard mention of the purchase of the Camberley Square and the House of Fraser building. And one of the comments I made at that time was that it was impossible for me to make a decision because I had insufficient information to do so and insufficient time to do so. And if I was a member of the executive, with the information that was in the committee papers, I would be really worried about making the decision with the information that was in front of me, following a lot of the questions that have come through this evening and without that debate. So, point number 1, there's nothing to stop us. There's nothing to stop us signing on the dotted line tomorrow with the preferred bidder if this decision from the executive is not called in. Is that a correct assumption? And number 2, just to be mindful of those that have laid a huge amount of criticism at council members that are no longer here about previous purchases, we need to be absolutely sure that we have all that information at our hands.
Councillor Wheeler, was there a question?
Yes, the question
First part.
was, if this evening we don't say that this decision should go back to the executive, is there anything to prevent Wood End car park being signed on the dotted line tomorrow and going?
So who wants that one?
No, shall I?
There isn't. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. That's correct. If this committee doesn't refer the decision back to the executive, then the decision can be implemented.
That in relation to 1.5, just asking the committee whether there's any support for a proposal for reconsideration of the decision after the full council debate, given the fact there's going to be new fresh ideas brought up, etc., etc. I just thought it's good to...
I'm afraid I have support for that. As I said, I don't think it'll change the decision, but I don't think all the information was available at the point that it was made.
Does anybody else have the same feelings, Councillor Wilson?
No, I've got the opposite feelings. I think we should press ahead, not defer.
Okay, any other sides, comments from anybody else?
Press ahead.
Press ahead. Is that basically the general feeling of the committee? I'm getting nods from everybody else. Okay.